Welcome to Story Time with Brandon. In this episode, we're reading The Raven. There was once upon a time a queen who had a little daughter who was still so young that she had to be carried. One day the child was naughty, and the mother might say what she liked, but the child would not be quiet. Then she became impatient, and the ravens were flying about the palace. She opened the window and said, "I wish you were a raven, and would fly away. Then I should have some rest." Scarcely had she spoken the words before the child was changed into a raven, and flew from her arms out of the window. It flew into a dark forest, and stayed in it a long time, and the parents heard nothing of their child. Then one day, a man was on his way through the forest, and heard the raven crying, and followed the voice. When he came nearer, the bird said, "I am a king's daughter by birth, and am bewitched, but you can set me free." "What am I to do?" asked he. She said, "Go further into the forest, and you will find a house wherein sits an aged woman, who will offer you meat and drink, but you must accept nothing, for if you eat or drink anything, you will fall into a sleep, and not be able to deliver me. In the garden behind the house there is a great heap of tan, and on this you shall stand and wait for me. For 3 days I will come every afternoon at 2 o'clock in a carriage. On the first day 4 white horses will be harnessed to it, then 4 chestnut horses, and lastly 4 black ones. But if you are not awake but sleeping, I shall not be set free." The man promised to do everything that she desired. But the raven said, "Alas, I know what you already will not deliver me. You accept something from the woman." Sucks being a raven. Then the man once more promised that he would certainly not touch anything, either to eat or to drink. But when he entered the house, the old woman came to him and said, "Poor man, how faint you are. Come and refresh yourself. Eat and drink." "No," said the man, "I will not eat or drink." She, however, let him have peace and said, "If you will not eat or take 1 drink out of the glass, 1 is nothing." Then he let himself be persuaded and drank. See, all it takes is 1 drink and then you get date raped. That's what the story is about. Date rape. And princesses being transformed into corvids. But mostly date rape. Shortly before 2 o'clock in the afternoon, he went into the garden to a tan heap to wait for the raven. As he was standing there, his weariness at all once became so great that he could not struggle against it, and lay down for a short time, but he was determined not to go to sleep. Hardly, however, he had laid down, then his eyes closed of their own accord, and he fell into a sleep, and slept so soundly that nothing in the world could have aroused him. She's really using the good date rape stuff. Rohypnol. Yeah, that's it. That's the one. See, you can't resist. He's totally getting banged by that old lady. At 2 o'clock, the raven came driving up with 4 horses. But she was already in deep grief and said, "I know he is asleep." And when she came to the garden, he was indeed lying there asleep on the heap of tan. She alighted from the carriage, went to him, shook him, and called him, but he did not awake. How does a raven shake a person? They weigh like 2 pounds. Maybe. Next day about noon, the old woman came again and brought him food and drink, but he would not take any of it. But she let him have no rest, and persuaded him until at length he again took 1 drink out of the glass. Towards 2 o'clock he went to the garden, to the tan heap, to wait for the raven. But all at once he felt such great weariness that his limbs would no longer support him. He could not help himself and was forced to lie down, and fell into a heavy sleep. When the raven drove up with 4 blown horses, she was already full of grief, and said, "I know he is asleep." She went to him, but there he lay sleeping, and there was no waking of him. Rape. Next day the old woman asked, "What's the meaning of this?" He was neither eating nor drinking or anything. "Did he want to die?" he replied. "I am not allowed to eat or drink, and will not do so." But she set down a dish with food and a glass with wine before him. When he smelled it, he could not resist, and swallowed a deep drink. When the time came, he went into the garden to the heap of tan, and waited for the king's daughter. But he became still more wary than the day before, and lay down and slept as soundly as if he had been a stone. At 2 o'clock, the raven came with 4 black horses, and the coachman and everything else was black. She already was in the deepest grief, and said, "I know that he is asleep, and cannot deliver me." When she came to him, he was lying fast asleep. She shook and called him, but he could not wake him. The end. Actually, it goes on, but I wanted to say that rape, it ruins everybody's lives, not even just yours. Sometimes princesses' daughters, who are birds. Because you're on a heap of tan, which I assume is a rape swing or something. Then she laid a loaf beside him, and after a piece of meat, and a thirdly bottle of wine, that he might consume all of them as he liked, but he would never grow less. Oh, they would never grow less. So, they're infinite wine. After this, she took a gold ring from her finger, put on his, and her name was graven on it. Lastly, she laid a letter beside him, wherein was written that what she had given him, and that none of the things would ever grow less. In it was also written, "I see right there that you will never be able to deliver me, but if you're still willing to do so, come to the garden at the golden castle of Stromberg. It lies in your power, I am certain." And when she had given him all these things, she seated herself in the carriage and drove to the golden castle of Stromberg. When the man awoke and saw that he had slept, and he was sad at heart, and said, "She certainly has driven by, and I have not set her free." Then he perceived the things which were lying beside him, read the letter wherein was written everything that had happened. So he arose and went away, intending to go to the golden castle of Stromberg, but he did not know where he was. And after he had walked about the world for a long time, he entered into a dark forest, and walked for 14 days, and still could not find his way out. Then it was one more evening, and he was so tired that he lay down in the thicket and fell asleep. The next day he went onwards, and in the evening he was again about to lie down beside some bushes. And he heard the howling and crying, and could not go to sleep. And the time when people light the candles, he saw one glimmering, arose and went towards it. Then he came to a house which seemed very small, for in front of it was a great giant standing. He thought to himself, "If I go in and the giant sees me, it will very likely cost me my life, or he'll rape me." At length he ventured in. When the giant saw him, he said, "It is well that you come, for it is long since I have eaten. I will at once eat you for my supper." "I'd rather you would leave me alone," said the man. "I do not like being eaten, but if you have any desire to eat, I have quite enough here to satisfy." "If that be true," said the giant, "you may be easy. I was only going to devour you because I had nothing else." Then they went and sat down to the table, and the man took out the bread, wine, meat, which would never come to an end. "This pleases me well," said the giant, and ate to his heart's content. What are the logistics behind this? Because giant table, endless meat. I mean, what if he were able to eat the whole loaf of meat? I imagine it's in loaf form. In one bite, would it just infinitely duplicate in his stomach? Or does he have to, bite off a piece and then it, regrows? I mean, I can understand the bottle of wine, but, Then the man said to him, "Can you tell me where the golden castle of Stromberg is?" The giant said, "I will look at my map. All the towns and villages and houses are to be found on it." He brought out the map which he had in the room and looked for the castle, but it was not to be found on it. "It's no matter," said he. I still have some larger maps in my cupboard upstairs, and we will look into them. But there too, it was vain. You obviously needed the largest map of all. I mean, you just keep going bigger and bigger until eventually you figure out where the city is. That's the strategy anyways. Or use Google Maps. I bet Google Maps could find that city. I mean, castle. The man now wanted to go onwards, but the giant begged him to wait a few days longer until his brother, who had gone out to bring in some provisions, came home. Was the giant scared? When the brother came home, they inquired about the golden castle of Stromberg. He replied, "When I have eaten and had enough, I will look at the map." Then he went up to his chamber, and they searched the map but could not find it. Yeah, generally when you don't find things on a map once, it doesn't appear. Unless you're bad at literacy. Or map. You're bad at map. Wendy's bad at map. How they brought an older map out, and they did not rest until they found the golden castle. "How am I to get there?" asked the man. The giant said, "I have 2 hours' time, during which I will carry you into the neighborhood, but after that you must be at home to suckle the child that we have." What? Now he's a mother? I don't get it. So the giant carried the man about 100 leagues from the castle, and said, "You can very well walk the rest of the way alone." He turned back. The man, however, went onwards day and night, until at length he came to the golden castle of Stromberg. It stood on a glass mountain, and the bewitched maiden drove her carriage around the castle, and then went inside it. He rejoiced when he saw her, and wanted to climb up to her. But when he began to do so, he stooped down to the glass again. So he built himself a hut, and stayed in it a whole year. And every day saw the king's daughter driving about above, but could never go to her. Then one day he saw from his hut 3 robbers who were beating each other, and cried to them, "God be with you!" So, when 3 robbers are beating each other, you're like, "Bless you, guys! Good luck!" Maybe is he like trying to say beat each other more, or is he just saying that they should be good people later? They stopped when they heard the cry, but then saw no one. They once more began to beat each other, and that too more dangerously. So he again cried, "God be with you!" Again they stopped, looked round about, but they saw no one, and went on beating each other. Then he cried for the 3rd time, "God be with you!" and thought, "I must see what these 3 are about," and went over and asked why they were beating each other so furiously. One of them said he found a stick, and then when he struck the door with it, the door would open. So, is the logic that if he beats his friend with a stick, his friend will open? I think that makes sense, but it's really gruesome. The next said that he had found a mantle, and whenever he put it on, he was invisible. And the 3rd said he found a horse which a man could ride everywhere, even up the glass mountain. Oh, yeah, convenient. An everywhere horse. It's like an ATV, but an ATH. Even glass mountain horse. And now they did not know whether they ought to have these things in common, or whether they ought to divide them. Then the man said, I will give you something in exchange for these 3 things. You see, when you can't make arrangements with your friends, to share or something, you end up beating each other, because that's really the only solution in the end. If you can't come to a diplomatic solution, the only logical thing to do is to start beating on each other until something resolves. Money indeed I have not, but I have other things of more value. But first I must try yours to see if you have told the truth. Then they put him on the horse, threw the mantle round him, and gave him the stick in his hand. And when he had all these things, they were no longer able to see him. Why are thieves always so stupid? So he gave them some vigorous blows and cried, "Now, vagabonds, you've got what you deserved! Are you satisfied?" And he rode up the glass mountain, but when he came in front of the castle at the top, it was shut. He struck the door with his stick, and it sprang open immediately. He went in, ascended the stairs, came to the hall where the maiden was sitting with a golden cup of wine before her. She, however, could not see him because he had the mantle on. And when he came to her, he drew from his finger the ring which she had given him, and threw it into the cup so that it rang. Then she cried, "It's my ring, so the man who set me free must be here." The courtiers searched the whole castle and did not find him, but he had gone out, and had seated himself on the horse and thrown on the mantle. When they came to the door, they saw him and cried out in their delight. They alighted and took the daughter in his arms, but she kissed him and said, "Now you have set me free, and tomorrow we will celebrate our wedding." He promptly ran away, and was the badass ghost horseman of Stromberg. I added that last part. I figured, once you got invisibility, a horse that can go anywhere, and a stick that opens all doors. Oh, and also a set of food that never runs out. You're set for life, and you're the most badass person of ancient times. So that's what I want to leave you at. The most badass person of ancient times was raped. Date raped. Several times. And could talk to corvids. The end.